Welcome to Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skills. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Dawn Grant.
We're here with Anthony Matarese, the recent 2024 U.S. Open winner, and I'm super excited to have you as my first guest on my new podcast. So thank you very much for agreeing, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really curious, the kind of person I am. I'm all about the mind and people and their lives and how their shooting is related to their lives and everything. So I wanted to start off with this 2024 U.S. Open win and tell me what it means to you and how you got here.
I mean, I treat every competition seriously, and they're all important to me, but it's definitely a meaningful win for me. I've had, in the last couple of years, a lot of really good performances that put me in second or third, whether it's, I tied for I won the U.S. Open in 2021. I tied for HOA in 22 and lost in the shoot-off. Had a second or third at the Nationals in that time frame. And then just recently at the World FITAS Championship, I lost by one bird to end up with the silver medal. So it was meaningful to put in all the hard work and stand on top of the podium instead of second or third, which is great, and nothing against anyone who comes in second or third. I've done it many times, but it's a lot of hard work to not win sometimes, so it was definitely meaningful for me.
I saw your social media post where you had written that, all the things that got you to this point, but also there's been many, many times that you've considered quitting. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Just the level of commitment that it takes to keep going and stay at the top of the game, and then when you have moments that you're not doing as well as you'd like to, and you're sacrifice a lot of time and effort and energy and time away from your family and doing other things that you like to do and enjoy doing. There's definitely times where it kind of crosses your mind and go, what am I doing this for? We really don't do it for the money. There's not that much money in our game. So you're really doing it because you love to win and you love the thrill of competition. That's the reason you're doing it. So I've been competing for a long time. As I mentioned, I shot my first U.S. Open in 1997. So just to show up every year is a commitment. Never mind being prepared and taking it seriously.
I wanted to kind of go over with you just, let's go back in Anthony's life. Like when you were young or a teenager, what did you want to do when you grew up?
When I was in high school, I thought I would go to college and become a lawyer. It's kind of what I go to law school after that. And I started teaching shooting when I was 13 or 14 years old, just because the opportunity was there at my range, given that I grew up there and there was people trying to learn how to shoot, and there was more people trying to learn how to shoot than there was available to teach them. So I started instructing. Did that all through high school, did that all through college, would come home on the weekends and give shooting instruction pretty much every weekend of going to college. And then when I graduated college, I kind of changed my mind in college that I was become a business and finance major. And and then when I graduated college, I decided that I'm going to give it a shot teaching shooting a little bit, considering I already had a well-established business. and the rest is history.
So when you were going to college originally, were you on that path to be a lawyer?
Well, I mean, you can study anything in undergrad and still go to law school. So now my freshman year in college, I had taken a couple, I'd say taken economics 101, and people in my class thought it was difficult, and I thought it was the easiest thing in the world. And I had changed, my mind then that I was going to be an econ and a business major. And so when I went to college, yes, I still had, desire to go to law school. By the time I was done my first semester, I had changed my mind.
But what do you think was like appealing to you related to being a lawyer, and how is that carrying over to what you're doing now?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I mean, I was just around a couple things, as a high school student, related to some legal matters, etc., business related stuff like that, and I just kind of like the idea of kind of just logic and reasoning to get to a decision. So I thought the idea was intriguing.
Well, and I could definitely see how the logic and reason side of your brain carries over to a lot of what you're doing, whether it's related to the business or target setting or your instruction and even all the business decisions in themselves. Because I know you're juggling a lot. I can assume because you are in the car that you're probably driving to your next business. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm driving to the beach. We got some fishing competitions coming up, and I have to. We're supposed to fish tomorrow as a charter, and I have to meet my mate at the boat to work on a couple things.
That leads me to one of the things I want to talk to you about is the schedule that you hold and the juggling that you do, which I know from my own experience does come easier for some people than others. So tell us about a typical day or week in your life.
So from September through June, I definitely take out my shooting competitions, etc. Maybe a vacation or something, but I work 6 or 7 days a week. Definitely from September till June. I have 4 kids, so I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, do a few emails, and make coffee, and then get my kids up at 6 o'clock and do breakfast with them, and go do lessons for generally 8 hours a day, and then handle all my own, emails and scheduling and stuff I have going on with the business side of my shooting school, which um, this fall I'm going to release my second book. Produced videos instructional shooting videos for myself, Zach Keenbaum, and George Digweed, and I've been the co-producer on those. So I do all of that basically before I go out on the range teaching or after the kids go to bed. So I try to be home and be present with them and dinner and get them in bed, and then do another hour or two of work and go to bed. And then keeping up with I do all the marketing side of M&M, and then handle all the big shooting events, some of our big hunting events, and then kind of help oversee things, in a operational standpoint. So my day's pretty busy, and I kind of run that schedule from September till June, and then the summertime I have whatever shooting competitions I have, which is this year's been I went to the North Central Regional, the World Feed Tennis, the U.S. Open, so that's about 2 weeks out of my schedule right there, minimum. And then run some fishing charters, some fishing tournaments, and then from June till now I would go from Ocean City, Maryland to New Jersey and do lessons on like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That give me a chance to practice once or so, and then go back to the beach and fish, 3 or 4 days a week. Kind of been doing that since June, and then now August we have a bunch of fishing tournaments, and I won't do many lessons in August. Kind of concentrate on those fishing tournaments and spend a little time with my family. So it's pretty busy. I can tell you, like my fall and winter schedule all the way to January. I can tell you what I've got going on every single day of the week till the first of the year, and it's pretty much something.
Yeah.
I have very few down days. I will put in my schedule, off on this Monday, or the kids have Halloween parade at 1:00 at school. I'll take that afternoon off. They've got a Halloween event at the school, or they've got they're off for whatever, the Columbus Day. I might take that day off and go hunting or something with them. So pretty busy and very regimented. I schedule if I'm going to practice myself. I schedule in January 2 hours at the end of the day, and once or twice a week in October, so that I have the time set aside to be able to do that, say, before the Nationals. So pretty much how I operate is, very scheduled and very far in advance. And I can make a change if really need be, but I try to stick to what I've committed to.
How much have you, or were you able to practice before this U.S. Open?
So I shot in the beginning of the year a little bit, given that I got a new gun. I shot some practice in the beginning of the year. Not a ton, but I probably shot maybe 3,000 or 4,000 practice shots from February till May. On top of doing the competitions that I did the Southeast Regional, the Western Regional, the Jack Links Cup. So I did those three, and then we had the World Championship. So I didn't shoot it all from mid-April to after the World Championship. I didn't even shoot one time for about 45 days, and then say June 1st, I shot the regional the first or second week of June in Wisconsin. I shot about 1,000 practice shots before that, and I shot that tournament. I shot okay, but definitely was just kind of rusty from not having been pulling the trigger very much, both from a competition standpoint and a practice standpoint. And then I shot about 2 days a week between, for a case of shells or so, between the North Central Regional and the World FITES Championship. So I probably shot about 1,500 or 2,000 rounds for the World FITES Championship. And then after that was the last weekend in June, and going into the U.S. Open, I shot 3 or 4 times. So in the 3 weeks, I shot about 1,000 shots. So not really, on a relative basis, not really a ton, So I've probably had about 7,500 practice rounds with my new SL2 since February. So that's not really that much, in my opinion. So there's actually, you're talking about the practice. So I was saying I have a good handle of where my confidence is, what shots I need to practice, what I think the difficulty level might be that I come up against, what my weaknesses were, say, from the last tournament. So I kind of had an idea what my weaknesses were from the World Championship. I felt really good coming off the World FITES Championship and going into the U.S. Open. So I was on my boat fishing, and this was the Sunday before I went to the U.S. Open. He was down there. I know him from shooting, and he's like, "Aren't you going?" We fished this kids tournament on a Saturday and Sunday. He goes, "Aren't you shooting the U.S. Open?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "When do you leave?" I'm like, "Wednesday." He's like, "Geez, Sue." He goes, "You better get home and practice." I said, "I got lessons on Monday and Tuesday all day." I said, I might practice a little bit tomorrow. I said, I just came in second at the World Championship. I know what I need to work on. I said, I feel pretty good. I don't need to practice that much. And he just kind of laughed at me, And he texts me. He texts me when Sunday night. That guy, he's like, "Damn." He goes, "You meant it when you said it."
Yeah, right.
that's part of, I have a good handle on where I am and if I need to work on something more, if I can work on something less, if I have a certain shot that's problematic or just a level of bringing my timing or my confidence up a little bit, so, and I'll actually, which is an interesting thing kind of mentally, I actually won't practice very much if my last results were good and I felt as good as I could. If I felt as good as I could coming off the my last competition, or how I ended my last competition, and I didn't have a lot of shots that made me nervous, etc., sometimes it's better not to practice. Just now that's at a high level, and that's at a high level, and that's with a lot of experience. But you can definitely over practice. That's for sure, because you can open a bag of worms, right? If you make the target hard enough in your practice, then you start going, man, what am I doing wrong? And and you're running out of time. If you're running out of time to get ready,
All the pressure and trying too hard and everything else starts creeping in.
if you're running out of time to get ready and you start struggling on your last practice session or two, you can't get back to feeling as good as you were before you started. So you're if you gotta be careful with that, and that's kind of how I ended the World FITES Championship and then went into the U.S. Open.
Curious, with the amount of instruction you do, a lot of teachers and coaches and instructors, just and teachers in general, like in school and everything, and myself, from my own experience, I would say that I learn a lot when I'm teaching people, and a way that a question's presented to me, and then when I'm explaining it, or maybe just a different angle on the same topic, or kind of little light bulb moments. So do you feel that the amount of instruction that you do helps you also in your performance?
I see a lot of targets, and I'm fully ingrained with every aspect of the game. So I think it does a couple things. One, I'm really good at reading the birds because I, for the most part, spent my whole life, at least 9 months of the year, on a shooting range in some capacity. So in terms of reading the birds and understanding the equipment and what it's doing, and making a plan and recognizing what to do when, I feel like surely doesn't hurt to be that ingrained with being around the sport in terms of really just experience. Feel like if there's any downside of it, spending all that time on the range, is just staying motivated, to motivated to practice, and then motivated to go to a competition, and be hungry to win after you spent the last month out giving shooting lessons.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't hurt. It can hurt you. The challenge, I think, for some people is, there are some people that say, man, if I teach too much, it messes up my shooting. I shoot and I teach people exactly the same as the way that I shoot. So, people will often say, well, if I'm talking about shooting a lot, I'm too conscious of it. I'm too conscious of the process, etc., to perform as well as I can subconsciously, so to speak. That doesn't really affect me because I'm good at being out of the box and then in the box. What I do out of the box is, I'm not. What I do out of the box, I'm thinking about. What I do in the box, I'm not thinking about it. So that doesn't really, I'm good at that transition. So that doesn't really bother me. So I would say, it's probably an overall, for me, an overall plus if I'm, from my experience on the range. Now, this time of the year, I've been spending 2 to 3 days a week on the range, and the rest of the time doing something else, whether it's fishing or with my family, etc. I think that's better than 7 days a week on the range for 2 weeks, leading into a major championship, for sure. Just because your mind is, a little bit burnt out with doing the same thing every day.
Yeah. So you said when you are doing it so much and you are doing the instruction, it's hard to stay motivated to go back out and practice or win. So what does drive you and motivate you? What keeps you going back out?
I'm just a diehard competitor. It's almost it's either a blessing or a curse, depending on how you want to look at it. So I'm just super competitive. I don't want to do something. I don't want to do something not to my full potential. I've literally had this conversation with a good friend of mine just this weekend, somebody that I would consider one of the best shooters in the country, but not necessarily shooting to their potential currently, and they're a little bit frustrated, et cetera. And, I said, look, man, I've been through multiple times in the last, I've been doing it for 30 years, but multiple times, say in the last 15. And I said, look, you have to make a commitment to yourself of what you're going to do, and I've kind of evaluated it in my own shooting. I've evaluated as this, if I've spent this much time and effort to get to the point to where I am, I've already done the majority of the hard work. So if I've done the majority of the hard work, I need to continue to do the rest of it. Or, you got three options. I said, you can go out there and be whatever level of committed, go to whatever tournaments that you can happen to get to, and practice, whatever you feel like, and be happy with your results. You can go 110% and go to all the tournaments that you can, with a practical, what's practical, and practice as much as you can as needed to reach your potential. Okay. Or you can quit. That's it. You got three options. Okay. And for me, I only have two options, because I'm not going to go out there and do anything, half-hearted. I'm not gonna have any fun. I'm not gonna derive any fun just by showing up. And I think that that's what drives me. Is that I want to do as well as I can. I want to reach my potential. I want to win. And I'm not so concerned with winning as I am about knowing that I gave 100%. So if I give 100% and I get first, great. If I give 100% and I get fourth, that's it. I'm happy with that. I might not be happy at the moment, but I'm happy the next day, because that was the best I could do. So, for me, I really kind of have, using that example, I have two options: to stay 100% in or be 100% out, and there's no kind of in between. So, not every person is wired that way. I definitely have students that I know their number one problem of reaching their potential is, they're not, it doesn't bother them enough. They might be mad and upset, but I really know it doesn't bother them enough. It doesn't bother them enough to take ownership of the result and do something different. On the flip side, you have people that are trying so hard, that they can't get out of their own way because of that. So it's a fine line, and there's a fine line to that, and what you do in advance of the competition and what you do during the competition, I feel like all matters depending upon how that person is wired. Because each person is a little bit different. In our sport, you have, and this is just the facts. The 98% of the people are 98% of the people out there really would say, "Hey, I really do this because I love it and I do it for fun," right? Um, so I don't shoot for fun. Okay, I shoot to win. That's why I shoot. Now, when I win, I love it. So I love the people, and I love some of my very best friends are in the shooting community. So I love to go there and hang out with my friends and spend quality time with them and go grab dinner. I love the challenge of the competition, but I really, if I didn't have if I wasn't pursuing it 100%, I wouldn't be there. And I think that when you look at some people's performances and you go, wow, that's unbelievable, there is a significant, most of those people have that significant level of commitment and desire to get there, because then what they do, what's required of them from a competition standpoint, practice standpoint, commitment to whatever they need to do mentally, you need that level of fire to be able to keep going, especially over a period of time. It's hard to keep showing up for a long time, especially when you don't get the I literally said this to my wife, and I said it to Joe Finizzi, him and I just in conversation after the World Feed Test. I said, the last couple of years for me, man, is a lot of, at my point in my career, I need to win for that to be really that meaningful on my resume. So, I said to Joe just in conversation, when I got second at the World Feed Test, I said, it's a freaking lot of hard work and, effort and, just hard work those days out on the range to not have anything significant to add to my resume. Sure, getting second at the World Championship is something I still consider adding to my resume, but it doesn't really have that much meaning if you've already been on the podium at the World Championship 7 times, or 8 times. So you need something to get you through that moment to keep you going for the next one.
Right. When I was doing just private practice and helping just all different people, like fear of bridges and heights and weight loss and smoking cessation, and the athletes first started just kind of dribbling in. Um, what I noticed different from a competitor versus a non-competitor was like their their work ethic. And like I'd give them homework and they would go home, and the next week at the next session they will have done it. Where somebody coming in for weight loss was like, what homework? Like, oh, well, I didn't really have the time. And I started noticing really early on that I loved that competitive spirit in somebody, because they were willing to do the work and they were resilient and they were going to try again, even if they didn't get what they wanted, that one time. And they weren't going to they're still human and they'll make excuses and they're not perfect. But compared to a lot of the other clients I was having, like the work ethic and the resilience and that competitive spirit just keeps them coming back and doing the work over and over and over again, which I love, because like for me, I'm putting the work in. So I'd like to see the other person putting the work in. I don't think, a lot of people who are non-competitive could even survive the, let's say, quote unquote failure, or the amount of time and the amount of effort and the giving of yourself and all of these things that you're talking about, right?
To me, even after doing this for a long, long, long time, if I if I come close or I've worked at it, I always give my best. It's painful, right?
Yeah.
It's painful to lose, and I feel like you need that, or you need to find that to truly reach your potential. I have a lot of students, and some of them, all of them, lots of great people, uh, often very successful in their personal lives, etc. But there is a lot of excuses, that people don't even really classify as excuses. Uh, and I think that's a major setback for a lot of people, right? It's not that they're like, oh, I missed, because the wind was blowing, okay, and it blew my targets further. But they're more subtle than that. They're subtle enough that they don't really realize, that they don't really realize that they're potentially holding them back. More so, holding them back from commitment and hard work and ownership. So if you didn't win, if you didn't shoot as well as you thought you were capable of, it's only you. Okay, that's it. And maybe something else was going on, maybe whatever was happening, but over time probability shakes out with all that. Okay, so you're going to get a good draw. You're going to get the best course on the best day. You're going to get the best lighting. You're going to get the best weather, and you're going to get the worst. It's just probability, right? So as long as you put that in your vocabulary as a rationale for lack of performance, then you've shortcutted yourself for the future. Because yes, that happens. Okay, I told someone just this weekend, a good shooter, and they're trying to figure out something with their gun, etc. And I just simply said, whatever you figure out, it's got to be after this. It's got to be all you. I don't want to hear anything from you about this problem or that problem because you're holding yourself back. And I said, I'm not saying this to, give you a hard time. I'm saying this to help you. I've heard you too many times say this happened, that happened, this, that, whatever. Well, I don't want to hear it because I'm coaching you and you're asking me to help you do better. So the answer is it's all you. Yeah, and kind of looked at me and said, okay, like sometimes people just need to hear that, right?
Well, and to me, that's a big aspect of the mental game, are these underlying belief systems that are in the subconscious, and they do seem subtle because they're just part of that person. Little underlying things like, oh, I'll never make it to that level, or I always fail, or I can never hold it together, or there's just some people, like at my shotgun club, if I'm helping in the morning of the registration of an event, I can hear, like last weekend or the weekend before, there was a guy that came in and he was running late. So he was kind of like out of breath and rushing and everything. And I was like, well, you got to chill down a little bit, if you're going to go out there and have fun and break some clays, because he was spinning. And he was like, oh, I never win anyways. And it was just such a normal part of something he would say.
A lot of people, I've come to be very aware of this. A lot of people have, in my opinion, the pain of failure. They don't like the feeling, and it's too hard to handle. And a lot of people that they don't realize they have a personal defense mechanism built into their brain that protects their ego and protects them from the pain of failure. And I think statements like that, and people that fall way short of their potential sometimes, it's like, man, what happened? You could have shot a 90, you shot a 68. Okay, a lot of people quit. They quit trying. Now they're not going to tell you that they didn't quit trying because they don't know, because it's an automatic
Exactly.
mechanism that's
Mhm.
built in. Their brain is more likely to accept 68 because I didn't give a shit than 77. I tried my damn best. Okay, so I think there's a lot of that people have kind of built in. It's not to criticize them, it's to make them aware of that. Not every person is wired exactly the same way in that regard. I think there's people that are, that if they, their automatic responses, if they fail, they're going to fight harder and give 110%, and they're going to take that pain of failure, and it's going to be there and it's going to suck, but they're going to try to, fight through that, and then there's people who their response to that situation is kind of like, well, you know, this always happens to me, or they quit. I think those people quit. Their effort level and their intensity goes down without them realizing it. And that's the part that is important if somebody's listening, because I have people that I know what their capability is, and then I look at their score and I'm like, what in the world did you do out there? Okay, I know what their capability is, and it's, yes, you could have a breakdown, you could lose your confidence, and you could all the things that could go wrong mentally. But they still didn't even hold where their floor should have been. They're 10% lower than that. And something is happening where there's, it's like, my opinion, it's like a fight or flight, you know?
Well, that is part of it for
they,
sure. Yeah.
basically, they can't handle it. So they can't fight through it. It's a flight or flight response and they bail out, they quit, run, I think that's what happens sometimes for some people.
But this subtle thing that we're discussing right now is some of this patterns that are, like you said, they're different for all people. And somebody could have, certain beliefs like I'll never be good enough, meaning, in this particular scenario, I'll never make it to master class, I'll never win. Or there could be other patterns, like I know some top shooters, but one in particular who has the belief I'll never win at nationals. And these things are just subtle and on the surface, but that's when it's under the surface, that's the subconscious mind. And to me, that's the true mental game that I love to help people with, because you know, like one person can get in the stand and they're paranoid because of how long they're taking, and or who they're squatted with, and whether or not they've got a good plan for their shot compared to that other person who they know is a top shooter or a competitor, or in the master class. And then there's somebody else that I can use that as an example, like, do you worry about the people around you and how much time you're taking in the stand and who you're squatted with? And they'll say, that never even crosses my mind. But yet they're the type of person who can get really angry and pissed off and start blaming people or want to quit. And so there's all different scenarios like that going on.
Absolutely.
But going back to you, you brought up your wife a few times. What do you feel the importance of having like a support system, whether it's your wife or your family, especially with someone who, wants to compete and be out there and be really active? And, tell me some about that in your world and your experience.
For me, it's huge because um, I'm busy in my professional life outside of shooting. Have 4 kids, love my family, love my wife, and if I don't have her support 110% for them to be excited about me to go there and for them to be excited about me to do well, then there's zero chance uh, that I'll reach my potential, because the most important thing in my life is my family, not shooting. So if you're not 100, and I'm a firm believer in this, if you're not 110% committed when I say to my wife all the time, when I step on that range, the most important thing in my life for 2 hours has to be hitting that bird, hitting every bird. And if it's not, I'm not going to reach my potential. So if I have something else in the back of my mind, or if I was going away to travel to a big tournament and my wife was the opposite as she is and said, oh great, you're going to be gone shooting, I'm going to be stuck with 4 kids and having to run them all around or whatever, then I have zero chance of shooting to my potential. I would say exactly 0% chance of reaching my potential. So that's huge. You have to be committed. Now it's different if some guy's going there to hang out with his buddies and shoot plays and have some fun and see how he can do whatever. But for me, for my mind to be 100% in it, I have to have checked all the boxes prior to going there for what's really important to me, and making sure my family's happy and safe, and the most important, making sure that I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing in my professional life is very important. So I have to have those things secure before I can really devote myself to shooting. Because at the end of the day, it's really important to me, and I want to do well and I want to win. But shooting's not that important, right? So um, you know, it, you know, if I, you know, it's very simple. If I had something going on in my with my family that's would be a distraction, I just wouldn't shoot. And even the level of commitment. Like, so we've got a couple regionals coming up, you know, that I have some fishing tournaments going on around or during, etc. And, you know, I want to fish those fishing tournaments, right? And, you know, if I'm not 100% committed to shooting those tournaments, then probably not going to do as well as I want. And if I'm not going to do as well as I want and I'm not committed, why am I there? Right? You know,
Yeah.
so, you know, I think I also have good balance in my life. You know, people ask me, hey, are you going to go to this tournament? So I'm like, no. And they're like, why aren't you going to go? I'm like, because I don't feel like it. Okay. You know, and they can't kind of get they're like, well, it's a big shoot. They're giving away, you know, $10,000 for HOA. I'm like, I don't give a shit if they're giving away $30,000 for HOA. I don't feel like going. I'm not going. I'm not going to win if I don't feel like being there. It's not on my radar. I didn't plan it. I didn't schedule it. It wasn't what I don't have the desire to do it. So I'm not going to waste my time and energy doing something, you know, half-hearted, you know. So there's a lot to that, which is directly related to your question about my wife and my support staff, etc. Yeah, I need them to be on board so that they're excited about, not a burden, right? You know,
Now, did you like luck out with her from the beginning? Did she kind of know who you were and what you were about, and that you had this competitive drive or addiction within you? Or is this something you guys have had to have, a lot of conversations around? Because obviously everybody's wives are different, right? And some are going to be more supportive than others. And, if somebody gets in an argument with their wife the morning of an event, that can be a struggle, right?
I have students that I'm know well enough and are open with that said, man, you know, I'll be getting ready to go to a tournament, and my wife will be like, "Oh, you're going! I can't believe you're going to another tournament." And they'll be like, "I told you this. I've been planning to go for months." You know, and they give them that hard time, you know, the day before, and I know for a fact that holds them back, right? You know, so because their mind is not in it, they're making it. You know, they're worried about their family or their personal life, and they're not going to. Like I said, shooting's not that important, and I'm sure that their wife and their family is more important to them. So, you know, answering your question, I would say, you know, one, you know, this is always going to be something that I did. I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about putting 100% effort into things that I do. I put 100% effort into my family and my relationship with my kids and my wife. I put 100% effort into my work. I put 100% effort into shooting, and I put 100% effort into fishing. So she kind of knew that that's how I operate, and you kind of get the good with the bad, right? You know, that the time commitment that I put into some things, I guess you can consider you know, a distraction, but the effort and time that I put into my family and my relationship is just as much effort I put into doing anything in my life. So I think you know, you get it all. And so she knew that, you know, and I've probably, you know, if I didn't think that I had her on board for those things, I probably wouldn't have married her.
Yeah.
And but on the flip side, you know, there is moments where, you know, especially if there is moments where, you know, I'm busy working, I'm busy shooting, you know, and then I want to come home and go in a fishing tournament, right? Uh, where
Yeah.
we have to, you know, go back to the drawing board and talk and go through things to, you know, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And yeah, so yes, I mean, does it work out perfectly every time? Um, no. Okay, you know, but if it's related to, you know, if it's related to shooting and she knows it's important to me, you know, she gives me 100% support. Occasionally, you know, like we'll go to a shooting tournament, and for her, you know, she enjoys going, and she gets to catch up with friends that she sees a half a dozen times a year at most, sometimes only two or three times in a year, you know, and I'll have to remind her. I'll be like, babe, look, we're we got to go back and go to bed. I'm here to, I'm here to win, not to sit there after dinner and, have another glass of wine, so, uh, you know,
Yeah.
so, she's on board with that, but we have that conversation, like I think any healthy relationship, has to have. I don't think there's any relationship, whatever it is, whether it's, personal relationship, a business relationship, that goes perfectly without communication, and if something is important to her, tell me. If if I need you to do something different to help me, I'm going to tell you. And I think that goes a long way. If you just don't say anything, then you're at the same point that you were, and both parties are not as happy as they'd like to be.
And then you're right back to not being able to perform as well as you do in practice, or that you put all this time and money and effort into. And yeah, a lot of people don't recognize the mental aspect of all of these things. And one of the
I'll interrupt you briefly, but during the U.S. Open, I went out and shot the first morning, and I came back and we were staying only 15 minutes away. I came back to the hotel. We went and got breakfast before I did the feet test in the afternoon. And, she's getting 4 kids ready and whatever. And I was like, look, I got to do a couple emails, because somebody texts me and they're like, hey, I can't figure something out on your website. I'm trying
yeah,
to sign up for your target setting school, and the date's wrong. And the date wasn't wrong. They had an old flyer from the year prior. But I had to, in terms of how my mind works, I had to get on my computer and check all my calendar and make sure I didn't have something screwed up, just because it was going to be on my mind. And, my professional life is important to me. That's how I make a living and can afford to do the things that I do. And, so I told her, I'm like, I got to get on my computer, for 10 minutes and figure this out. And I did. And that's like an example for me of checking the box to now, okay, we're going to go get breakfast and I'm going to go shoot well this afternoon in VTS, right? So I can't just, leave that email there if I thought it was something. If somebody's just inquiring and saying, yeah, I need a lesson, then yeah, I can answer you on Monday.
right.
But if I've got something that was actually a problem, I need to rectify it and check the box so that I can have my mind clear.
Totally understand. Yeah.
I'll stay up, the night before I go to a big tournament. I'll stay up the night before and try to get all my work that I have done so that it's behind me.
So one of the things that I've observed about you over years, that I find actually pretty awesome. Well, let me just rewind. One of the first time, you don't know this, but the first time I ever saw you shoot was at Quail Creek Regator Cup back in 2013, and it was the first year that I started going to competitions because I was working with the clay shooters and all that, and Wendell Cherry and such back then. But so I knew your name as one of the top shooters, and I'm driving around on, I guess, was the red course, and I saw the name on the back of your vest or whatever, and I stopped and watched for a little bit, and you had missed some targets, and in very Italian style, I could tell you were upset and you're frustrated and fist punch in the air or whatever. And for the person that I am that does mental training, I was really curious how that would affect you in the next station. So you got in your golf cart and you drove to the next station, and I watched you, and you got out of your golf cart and you actually kind of like stood over near some trees and bushes and just kind of looked into them for a little bit. And then when you got into the stand, you broke every target. And I was amazed. I thought that was the coolest thing. I obviously don't know what you did in your head, but the way that you went from a level of, typical Italian frustration to, pulling it together and being able to break all the targets in the next stand. Like, what do you think you did back then, or that you still do in a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's easier said than done, but if you're going to give 100%, the result of the last station is irrelevant to the result of the next station, besides whatever lack of confidence you might have inherently created, um, I think that that's just mindset of hitting every bird that you can and being logical enough to realize that what you have to do to hit every bird that you can is do whatever the steps you believe are required at that next station. So that's basically how I you know that's basically how I operate. And if I was going to if I can't turn in a 95, then I'm going to turn in a 94. If I can't turn in a 90, then I'm going to turn in an 89. And having that mindset when you go out there, that kind of comes a little bit of that just fighting through it. There's a lot of talking yourself into doing the right thing versus responding to your emotions, right?
Right. So some kind of little pep talk or something you gave
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
to get yourself back on track. Well, then the other thing that I've observed is, you know, that back 2013, you didn't have kids on your hips and everything. And so, if you fast forward and you've got a wife and then you've got one kid and then you've got two kids and you got three kids and then four. And, at times you have one or two with you on a golf cart. And I mean, just for myself as being a parent, and that's another thing that amazes me. You're there by yourself parenting these two kids and engaging with them, and they're having a good time, but you can step out of that golf cart, go into the stand and break targets, which is, for a lot of people that would be very challenging and a big distraction. So, how do you feel that you're able to do that?
I kind of shoot two different ways, so like I shot the prelim at the US Open. My two youngest daughters flew with me on Wednesday. They're 4 and 7, and just the two of us went, and I shot all the events on Thursday at the US Open with them there with me. My wife didn't come till Thursday night. And when I have them, I will be a little bit lighter with my intensity and get to the station and get a plan for what I'm doing, you know, make sure they're fine and engaged. When I step into the box, I always I'll stop. If I think one of them's, 4-year-old, you got to be careful with on a range and get run over or anything, you know, uh, and I'll basically make sure when I step into the box, I make sure that they're safe, and flip my mind to concentrating on the targets for, you know, a minute or 35, 45 seconds, whatever it takes me to shoot my 2 or 3 pairs or 4 pairs. Um, when I go to shoot, say the main event, the main event at something that's super important to me, I generally try, if they're at an age where I don't think they're able to keep themselves safe the whole time,
Yeah.
then I generally try not to take them. So I kind of have two gears, so to speak. So I shot the prelim really well. I won, and I shot that really mentally definitely different than I shot the main event. It's kind of like two different gears, so to speak. Which is a little bit hard to put into words, but uh, I'm slightly put slightly less pressure on myself if I have them with me, and generally the result is good. But once you get to say that main event, I don't shoot it with less pressure on myself, so I can't escape that. So at that point, the distractions would matter. But the distractions when I put less pressure on myself don't matter, and I think people can relate to that. If you have things that sometimes things are bothering you, right? Well, those things are bothering you because of how you feel, not because of what those distractions are. Because on
Right.
another day, those distractions don't bother you, right? So if those distractions
Right.
don't bother you on another day, then that's really internal versus external.
And it's all, the saying goes, it's all on what you perceive
Right.
and how you if you have any ability to manage your mind and thoughts and situations. But you talk a lot about balance and recognizing, like, your level of self-awareness is pretty great, where you can recognize where you need balance or what you need to be doing in certain situations. So all that, definitely contributes to the level of that you're functioning. So at Quail Creek, I guess it was 2 years ago, maybe three, your wife had medical issues. And then in Arizona, your son was in the hospital. So, like, how do you handle those situations?
I mean, at Quail Creek
Right?
at Quail Creek that year, that was kind of a disaster. My wife was pregnant and had to have her gallbladder removed while we were at the tournament. So I had 3 kids, and my wife was at the hospital. I couldn't be there with all the kids anyway. It was during COVID, or right after COVID, and they still had some restrictions. And my youngest one was 2 years old, so we couldn't really be at the hospital the whole time anyway. So I basically handled the kids and shot for the first 2 days, and then while she was at the hospital, and then they decided she needed to have surgery, and then I didn't shoot the last day of the last day of the tournament. I didn't shoot. And then when I was at the Western Regional, my son went into the hospital on Saturday evening. Just he was an infant and had some viruses, and they're susceptible at that point to dehydration and everything. And I had just talked to my wife. I said, "Look, I can try to get home, but I'm not going to get home till tomorrow." There was no way to get home at that point. I'm not going to get home till tomorrow at in the afternoon anyway. I said I can shoot and then go home that night, which was I had planned anyway. I'm going to be home really only 6 hours later. And she's like, "Well, stay there and we're fine. Stay there and win." And you know, but again, she said we're fine. Stay there and win. So then I can I have her support to do that. And then I can go out there with a clear conscience and reach my potential.
Which is a kind of a theme that I'm hearing with you, like whether it's a potential wrong date on, all your marketing stuff or emails or, your to-do list, or whether your kids are safe or not, or whether she's okay or not. Like, if you're able to check that box, you're able then almost to put on a different hat and move into this competitor mode more purely, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe 110% that if your personal life is not in order, you will not reach your potential mentally, for sure.
Knowing how to manage your thoughts around things and everything. So, a few last things. First of all, happy birthday. A little tall, gray haired man just let me know that it was your birthday today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, so I'll just tell you the last things I want to ask you, and then you can rattle off. So, what's like the best and what you love about clay shooting and the industry and all that? And then what the worst of it, or the struggles? And then where do you see yourself in like 5 to 10 years? And then one piece of advice that you would give shooters. So, what's the best? What do you love about what you're?
I love the competition and I love the people. Um, so some of my best friends are in shooting, and I love to compete. So it gives you an opportunity to go compete, and our discipline is a great discipline, and I love competing, and I love the people. Um, in 5 to 10 years, I hope to be doing the same thing that I'm doing now. So I kind of, I'm 40, and I kind of, you know, I joke around and say to Zach, a good friend of mine, I say I got 15 more years, uh, or I'll joke with the younger guys, that are incredible shooters. I'll say, you got to deal with me for 15 more years, then you'll be off the hook, So I'm going to give it all my effort for the next 15 years, and then I'll probably back off a little bit. I'm sure I'll still shoot and probably have some of my kids shooting, but
Mm.
uh I'll be I'll be okay with whatever results that I get, at that point. Just, it'll be a weight off my chest uh, to not care so much, and
Yeah.
who knows, maybe in 15 years, if I'm still competitive, I'll rethink that. Right. But
So what's the one piece of advice you give shooters? If you had a magic wand or like a magic pill, like what's the thing that you would pass on to them, your wisdom?
I mean, have a plan of what you're going to do, have long-term goals. I mean, I think one of your one of the things that people do too much is they prioritize short-term goals and don't prioritize enough long-term goals. If you're uh there's a if you love the sport, if you're going to pursue it, if you want to reach your potential, you need to look a year, 5 years, and 10 years down the road. And I think if you put your uh emphasis on that, then what you do on an individual tournament has less puts less pressure on yourself. And if you're looking at a year and 5 years and 10 years, then you can work on your fundamentals of the game, make sure you have proper fundamentals, make sure you've had some reasonable coaching to ensure that, so that you're not doing things incorrectly technically. If your technical game is not sound, uh, your mental game's never going to be sound. Just because it's like a boat taking on water. Um, that you can do a lot of things correct, but not reach your potential. So, and I think you have to always be looking long term to do that, because sometimes something that you're working on in a short term doesn't yield you the best results in the short term. Um, so sometimes when I give someone a lesson, if they're doing something, if it's a student that I work with, kind of regular, and I know they've got a big competition coming up, sometimes if they're doing something wrong technically, I don't even tell them, because if they're not going to fix it by next week,
Don't put it in
then I don't
their
I,
head.
I don't want to cause them anxiety over something that is really something we have to work on long term. So have good fundamentals, have a long-term outlook on being able to get a plan for what your game is and what you want to do. And if you have success, great. Yeah, anyone that's a competitor, you're going to win, you're going to lose. You're going to do well, you're not going to do well. That's every sport, every discipline. So as long as you have a long-term plan, what happens in the short term is a speed bump in a road trip. So when you get to the end, it doesn't really matter. um,
The
so I think that's important.
or likely had contributed to you getting to the end. The little speed bumps, you learn to get over them, past them.
Absolutely.
So, is there anything particular you want to promote right now in your contact or website information?
My contact is my website is clayshootinginstruction.com. And my website for our videos is claytargetinstruction.com. I think all of those resources and stuff that we have there, if you're committed in the sport, are invaluable. I recently a lot of work with George Digweed, and there's a mental game comparison video there where him and I talk through some things. There's no question that I've actually added some things in my game from some things that George and I had talked about, mostly kind of from what to do at a station and outside the box and how to be even a better competitor. A guy that's won 28 world championships. If you can't learn something from him, then uh, your ears aren't open. So um, anybody that's committed to the game, anything that you can pick up that may, or I think sometimes you don't know the thing that's going to change your game. So be open minded, and just because someone says something doesn't mean you have to do it. But I think that you don't know the piece of information that can be helpful to you.
Well, awesome. Enjoy your time at is a fishing tournament. Is that what you're
Yeah, we
getting?
got a couple of big ones coming up in the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And happy birthday again. And thank
Thank
you for being my guest. And I hope to have you again.
Awesome. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Dawn Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dawngrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Dawn wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.